that was something else I think this whole situation has brought to light, is that someone can have very positive experiences with someone, but someone else may know that person as a monster. And we have to be able to hold both of those things to be true. Like, someone can totally know someone as this really great person, while all at the same time that person is actually acting like a monster to someone else.
Hey Ninja Babes, welcome to the Ninja Babes podcast. It's been quite a week, and I know many of you are wrestling with feelings and going through a lot with the recent news of what has happened with Drew Drechsel. And I want to be sensitive to what everybody is going through, and also sensitive to parents who are there listening with their kids. We will be discussing some sensitive material today in today's podcast, but it's material that is meant to be informative, educational, and to help parents and youth know how to speak to each other and to one another about what's going on. And so I encourage everyone to listen, but I just wanted to give that disclaimer and know that the actions of one person in this case does not represent what Ninja is as a whole. I think I can speak for the Ninja community and say that this is not what we want to be. This is not how we want to be characterized as a sport. We don't want to be characterized as a sport that's filled with abuse, sexual misconduct, and unsafe people. I started Ninja Babes 3 years ago because I wanted a way to support girls and women. I wanted to better serve the female community. I wanted a way to encourage and empower my sisters and my Ninja Babes, and I've been doing that this past 3 years. And then when this all happened this week, my heart broke, and I just felt like now is the time to full force go forward and see how I can serve you better. How can I educate the community? How can I empower you on a deeper level, talking about topics that have come up in the podcast, but we haven't covered this in depth. The next several episodes will be about these topics of abuse, recognizing red flags in relationships, safety in gyms, recovering from trauma. So I encourage you to listen and to share with your friends and coaches and to talk about it with each other. But today we do want to focus on what's been going on. And a lot of people have questions. A lot of people have been triggered by hearing the story of what has happened and what's come out in the news. So today I'm actually here with Whitney Miller. And the reason why I brought Whitney on today is she has a lot of experience in talking about these topics. She used to work as a BSW, a social worker at Child Advocacy Center. And what she did there was she was an intake coordinator and one of the family advocates at Child Advocacy Center. And so she has a lot of skill and experience in talking with families who have experienced trauma, in being able to talk about the red flags and the warning signals that you might see in relationships or anything like that. And so she's provided a lot of crisis counseling in the past. And so there's just a lot of experience, a lot of wealth of information here, Whitney, that I'm very excited that you're able to bring to us. And we're in a tough time where a lot of people don't really know how to talk about this and don't really know what to say. Parents maybe who need to talk to their kids about this topic and don't know how to bring it up. So Whitney, I'm so happy to have you here, and you're part of the Ninja community. You're not just some professional I pulled off the street. You're one of us. You are a ninja. So Whitney, it's great to have you. How are you tonight?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. Like I said earlier, I think had this been, last week or a month ago, just having the opportunity to talk to the community about child safety, which is something that I'm very passionate about, both because, it was my career, and then also just being a mom. Like, I want my kids to be able to play sports and be in a safe environment and to feel loved and supported. And, I love the Ninja community, and I want to see it thrive. I want to see it be a place where kids are empowered and adults are also empowered, and just everyone is safe and helping one another to achieve their goals. Yeah, I'm sad that we're here in a reactionary sort of sense, but at the same time, I think and I hope and pray that the information we share is helpful and that people are listening, because something did happen that's got their attention.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Sometimes we think, we have such a great community. Our gym is safe. Our coaches are great. Everyone's great. And it can be easy just to trust everyone. And, that's ideal. We want that. But the reality is that some people are not always well-intentioned, and things can happen that we don't expect. And, now something has already happened, and probably other incidents and things that have gone unsaid, even among other people or whatever, who knows, but we don't always know that these things could be happening right under our eyes and we don't realize it. So it's important to be able to talk about it now moving forward.
Exactly. And so I think what's important is that we start pulling back and dismantling myths about child sex abuse, that we can just be empowered by the truth and by facts and let those things guide our practice forward as a sport and as parents. So for instance, 1 in 10 children will be sexually abused before they're 18. And I think that's a statistic that is a little scary, especially in light of everything that's just happened. And I think a lot of times people take comfort in, oh, it's stranger danger. But when in reality, 90% of kids who are abused, they know their abuser. And 60% of those cases, the family would call the alleged perpetrator someone they trusted. So I think it sort of starts seeming more like something that makes more sense. Like it's not the stranger luring your child into an alley with candy. It's someone who has worked for, some time to gain trust and to gain access to kids.
Right. And you don't want to expect that. Like you want to assume that you can trust everyone. And I think that's why people can be fooled and fall into it themselves, or people can allow it to just seemingly be swept under a rug or ignored because, in one sense, we want to believe the best about people. And if it's your coach or if it's your friend or an adult that you look up to, you would never really expect it, or you never want to expect it. And so it's easy to miss it.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we start seeing it as more of a process, we can talk about it in terms like that we would use, or that I would use doing crisis counseling. So we talk about grooming behaviors is kind of the clinical term for it. And it just means perpetrators, they're predatory in the sense that they seek out targets that they can exploit that are vulnerable, kids who maybe are passive, they're quiet, they are lonely, they lack parental oversight or have strained relationships at home, kids that they feel like they can isolate easily or that they can just fill voids in the kid's life and use that and twist that to meet their own, sick needs. And then they do things to maintain the control. So they target kids, they gain trust, whether it's, they know a kid is super into Spider-Man and they're like, hey, I see you wear Spider-Man. I'm going to see the movie next week. I can take you, which all of that sounds super normal behavior. But it's an isolating, I'm meeting their needs, and it's not saying something sinister is going to happen at that trip to the movie theater, but over time, one-on-one situations like that, perpetrators use to build the trust and to build a relationship where they're able to say, no one knows you as well as I do. You've told me things you've never told your mom and dad, and to, isolate them from their family, isolate them from their friends who care about them. And the big thing that throughout crisis counseling and throughout like community prevention work that I've learned is that 81% of child sexual abuse occurs in one-on-one scenarios with a trusted person that they know. And so the more we start really thinking that through, avoiding one-on-one scenarios or, being more observant and diligent to ask questions of our kids and to really get to know, okay, where are they going with my kid? How long will they be there? Who else is going to be there? Asking more questions and either avoiding one-on-ones altogether or setting really good parameters and boundaries, and maybe even dropping in on your kid when they're one-on-one with another adult is helpful.
Yeah. And just to reiterate, like the reason why we want to talk about all this is, it's important even as an adult to be reminded of all these things, because it's not just like, oh, kids don't know. It's also adults sometimes don't realize that we can be too naive or trusting with people that we assume are in a leadership position and should be trusted. So I think it's important for adults and youth to kind of be aware more of these red flags and just not be naive to what might be going on and might be missing it. Could we talk some more about, other scenarios of red flags, even if it's not a gym situation, whether it's school or, something related to the gym, or other things that if you are a 15-year-old or, a teenager, you might not assume that it's bad, but what's a good way to kind of like test the waters and have that accountability in those situations?
Right. So I think before I dive into that entirely, I would like to say that I think for kids to understand what is bad, a really important and empowering thing for all of us who want to be safe is that we go out of our way to exemplify to them with our examples of how a safe person should be treating them. So an example would be as an adult woman, I wouldn't text or email or just directly communicate one-on-one with a student. if I was messaging the student, I would throw the mom in on the text or the dad or whoever, just so that it's just above board my communication with them. So, nothing gets miscommunicated or misconstrued. And so then, a 15-year-old or 16-year-old, if, an adult is sending you pictures or an adult is communicating with you, privately, that is a red flag. That's a large red flag. You should definitely talk to your mom and dad about it. Show them the communication. You want to be able to trust everyone, but I think everyone is coming to see that people who prey on kids, what I've taught my little kids is that they're tricky people. They're trying to trick you. They're trying to manipulate you. And so an outside, like an adult perspective on it is helpful. And I know sometimes with, parents and teens, that could feel really awkward, but that's why it's so important to have a good communication line between your mom and dad. Or if your mom and dad, if that's not going to happen, you need safe people, if it's a teacher or if it is a coach, or people who make you feel safe and loved and who care about your well-being and who are safe people and interact with you in a safe way that you can, ask these questions to.
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing that maybe even a lot of kids or parents or other adults are feeling right now is like, okay, well, I thought this person was safe. How do I know now, like, who else is safe or not safe? Even if I feel like they have a good track record, what do I say? How do I manage that moving forward?
Right. So, I mean, I think you arm yourself with truth. You arm yourself with the knowledge that people who are not safe seek to isolate your child. People who are not safe are people who seek one-on-one scenarios with your child. And so that's not saying, oh, mentor-mentee relationships are always bad, because that's not true. But it is saying that we need to be way more alert as parents with the adults that are around our kids, and be just more alert about interactions they may be having, and talk to our kids more strongly about, if an adult, like someone over the age of 18, is trying to do things one-on-one with you, or, even if it seems innocent, it's not always going to lead to something bad. However, there's a large percentage of the time that it could.
Yeah. I know we're going to get into this a little bit later as far as gym protocol and things like that. But I guess I've seen, even on social media, some of my guy friends who are coaches, they're posting being like, I am a safe person, almost like a cry for, like, please believe me, I am safe kind of a thing, which some of them, I know personally, I know that they're safe from my own experience. But I guess, do you have any words of wisdom for the guy coaches who are now feeling a little bit like, oh no, are people just going to assume I'm doing something bad because, my gym hasn't had these protocols in place? Like, what can guy coaches or female coaches do now just to sort of like show their sincerity in being safe moving forward?
Yeah. So I think what you do is you prove it. You say you're a safe person. Like, it's one thing to post on social media and say, oh, I'm a safe person, but it's another to go that extra mile and actually implement policies in your gym and be communicating this with the kids, be communicating this with the parents. So Darkness to Light was a community prevention program that I was trained to provide, but it's a national program. So there are Darkness to Light trainers. You can find their website at d2l.org. It's full of all sorts of helpful information. So you could contact, like a gym owner could contact the local Darkness to Light trainer, have them come in and do a session of the Stewards of Children workshop with your employees, parents. I mean, parents need to advocate for their kids. Like, ask gym owners, like, what are you doing to prevent this in the gym? And so coaches, gym owners, they need to step up in a way that acknowledges facts of, one-on-one situations are 81% of, sexually abused kids. It's a one-on-one situation. So how is your gym preventing these one-on-one situations? Are you background checking your employees? Maybe thinking through even, okay, a child walks in these doors. What is their experience like? Where is their opportunity for a kid to be pulled off to a bathroom by themselves? Where is their opportunity for sinister things to occur? And then writing your policy to protect them. And then also having in your policy and training your employees well to know what to do if a kid did disclose to you. Because, I hope that nothing else does come of this. However, if there is stuff still hidden, I hope everything comes to light, and I hope that it's handled well. And I think people, when they are empowered to know, if a kid says this to me, here's who I call, here's how I follow up, here's what I do, then I think people are more more confident to take those next steps, and they're not, just like a deer in the headlights when those events happen.
Yeah. I mean, if there are other individuals who have experienced some sort of abuse or sexual trauma or anything along those lines, what would you say to them as an encouragement to come forward, or who to speak to, or that sort of thing?
Well, I would definitely say talk to your parents. If you, live with your biological mom and dad, or your grandparents, whoever the safe caregiver in your life is, talk to them, tell them what happened. And if you are that safe person, that caregiver in their life, the most important thing they can hear is, I believe you. And then take the next steps. Call the child abuse hotline, call your local law enforcement, and make a report from there. There's child advocacy centers that do wonderful work where they bring in forensic interviewers who are specially trained to interview kids. And so the idea is that they only have to tell their story one time. It's recorded, it's used in court, and the person who interviews them is specially trained to interview kids. And so it's a very child-focused, child-friendly way for kids to be interviewed. And then that center also has mental health support. They have the ability to do medical exams, or if they don't actually have the exam room in the facility, then they can refer them out to someone who can do pediatric forensics. So there's a load of resources available to families who are going through this. And so you're not alone, and there's help out there. And if you're a kid who's suffering, let's start healing. What I would tell them is not to hold it in, to bring it out into the open. It may bring a mess initially, but it's what is needed for healing to start.
Yeah, I would just encourage people that it might be scary to come out and to express what's been going on, or to, finally admit what's been happening and that sort of thing. But I just wouldn't want anyone to feel so alone in what's happening, or feel shame or so much fear that they don't feel that they can come out and talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Whitney, what can be a good approach for parents to take if they have never spoken to their kids about this topic, or if they maybe have talked to their kids about sex or about sexual abuse a long time ago, but it's never come up again? What could be a good way for parents to talk to their kids about this?
Okay, so I'll use an example from my own personal life. We actually sat down with our kids and talked to them about the current situation. My oldest, just for a frame of reference, is 7, who's so he would be on the younger age of kids who do ninja. Definitely knows the person who's involved, and that was a role model for him. So I sat down with him and with my daughters as well, and I just said, mommy and daddy talked to you a lot about how there are some bad guys in the world that would seek to hurt kids. We've had these conversations, and they're like, yeah. And so then I told them, I was like, and mommy and daddy have told you that you can't always tell who those people are. And they nodded. And so we told them about what happened. We didn't tell them, details because of their age. We just told them that, he hurt a kid, and that he's been arrested, and they were upset. And, we just took that opportunity to just remind them that grown-ups can be tricky, and they want to trick kids into thinking they're good guys when they're not. And that's why it's so important that you talk to mommy and daddy if any grown-ups make you feel funny or unsafe. We talk about body safety in our house. We use the correct anatomical words for private areas. We broadly say it's the area that your swimsuit covers, but then we've taught them the proper names for those parts. And so in the conversation we talk, we're if any adult tries to show you their private parts, or they should not be looking at yours or touching yours. There's no games that involve private parts. So we just kind of had that conversation. And we also reminded them that safe adults do not ask kids to keep secrets from mommy and daddy. And they were like, okay. And I said, now surprises for birthdays, gifts for birthdays, we're very clear, even with grandparents, we tell them to call it surprises, because we want to make sure we keep our language clear for them, so that, grandma's not confusing them by asking them to keep a secret about, a gift for someone for their birthday. But with older kids, especially ones, if you haven't had this talk with them in a while, what I would recommend, so it's not that you have this one-time conversation and you figure out the right filters or apps or whatever to use to put protections on electronic devices. It's not this one-time kind of fix it thing that you do, but it's more of an all of life, open communication. Like you're there to love, to care, to provide protection for them. So there's a tendency, like if we get really scared, like obviously this is not a pleasant situation. This is scary. We can react in a way that just causes us to like clamp down on our kids and to just communicate to them in a way that they're like, yeah, something bad happened and now they've gotten real strict with me and I don't like it. And that's also that's not a positive way to move forward. We want to make sure like we're educating them and that we're not just turning our homes into like little police states where we just micromanage everything. You know, it's part of like providing that loving protection that is equipping them. Like we want to make sure we're giving them the tools they need to thrive outside of our homes. And sometimes that's, you know, we're teaching them how to self-regulate. We're teaching them to have convictions about how people should talk to them, to have convictions about, you know, their self-worth, their body. And so, yes, like we put those guidelines in place. We may put up filters or apps or whatever we need to protect our electronic devices. We may make them, you know, leave their phones in our room to charge at night or whatever rules are decided upon. But at the end of the day, those rules aren't what's going to keep them safe. What's going to keep them safe is learning how to self-regulate, learning how to make wise decisions. And it's going to come from like just an open and honest relationship with their mom and dad. And, you know, if you've never had these kinds of conversations, I think sitting teens down, older teens, they appreciate honesty. They appreciate authenticity. Sit them down and just say, you know what, guys, honestly, we have not talked about this enough. And recently, with everything going on, it has struck me how little I've prepared you. And I am sorry. And just apologize. And that's okay. And then just move on from there and just stress how important it is that, like, you know, I care for you. I want to affirm you. I love you. I want to protect you. And at the end of the day, I want you to be aware of danger, but I want you to be confident in how you can respond to danger. And so I think just opening lines of communication with teenagers and just saying, you know, have you ever experienced anything, or have you ever heard stories of friends that have, you know, experienced any types of abuse? Like what went on? What kind of questions do you have for me? You know, just opening that fresh line of communication. And it's not just like a one-time sit down. So you might have that initial honesty conversation and where you apologize for not talking to them sooner, but, you know, you check in with them like, hey, how are you doing with this? Has anyone or any of the kids at the gym, how are they doing? Is everyone safe? Do you feel safe? Like, do you have any concerns? And just being their advocate, teaching them what safe people do, teaching them what not safe people do. So I think it's important, you know, in those conversations to be like, look, you are 15 years old, adults who want to manipulate you, want to get you to not trust your mom and dad. They want to pull you away from your friends. So adults who are trying to get you in one-on-one situations, that should send up a red flag, getting them to talk more openly and honestly with you. And I think it just takes time. If you've never had these conversations, I don't think you can necessarily go into your first conversation like that with a teenager if you haven't regularly been checking in with them and expect a whole lot. But I think over time, if you regularly check in with them and remember facts about like how they were feeling before, who they're concerned about, like, and just keep checking in. And I think over time that does build their trust back and they will open up more.
Yeah, I think all of that is so helpful. And especially, you know, remembering that the goal is not to set up a bunch of rules and think that we can keep them safe just by those rules, but realizing that, you know, they need to have those internal gauges of what is right and wrong, or what is safe and unsafe, and how to report to their mom and dad or to their guardian, or, you know, having those tools and being empowered in their own selves is definitely key. So thank you for explaining all that. What about even just for, do you have any advice for kids talking to each other, or maybe teenagers talking to one another, if they suspect something weird is going on with a friend, how they can talk to their friends about it, or even confront a friend if they feel like something strange is going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So kids talking to each other, I mean, if a kid says something where you guys are like concerned about one another, like if kid doesn't seem like themselves, if they seem to be pulling away from people they usually hung out with, if they seem quieter than normal, if they seem if they seem more lonely, if they seem more maybe even sneaky, if their grades start to plummet, if there just seems to be a difference in their behavior and their attitude, just checking out with them and being like, hey, are you okay? Like, you just seem like you seem different lately. And then, going from there and not being afraid. One of the things to ask is, do you feel safe at home? Do you feel safe at the gym? Like, getting very specific, like, do you feel safe? And if you have actual suspicions about a certain person, like, is this a safe person for you? Like, just flat out asking them, because that was something else. I think this whole situation has brought to light, is that someone can have very positive experiences with someone, but someone else may know that person as a monster. And we have to be able to hold both of those things to be true. Like, someone can totally know someone as this really great person, while all at the same time that person is actually acting like a monster to someone else. And so we believe victim, like, they need to believe one another when someone says something, and they need to understand that, just because they've had nothing but positive interactions with a certain coach or with a certain kid's parent or another kid even, that doesn't mean someone else hasn't had nothing but almost negative interactions with that same person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's very powerful to bring up, because I think that is something that everyone is struggling with right now. And when so many people have seen this individual in so many, now in a very different light than maybe what they knew him as.
Right.
Whitney, thank you so much for what you shared today. I think it's really helpful just in helping us process and be more aware of, these situations happen. Unfortunately, nobody wants to see it happen, but it's important to be able to know how to move forward, to know how to talk to each other, talk to our kids, and build safer environments. So just thank you for your expertise and for coming on the podcast today. I know next episode we will be talking with you again, but talking more about gym safety and what we can specifically be doing in our gyms to practice safer protocol in our gyms, and questions we need to be asking ourselves, our gym owners, our coaches, just all together as a community in order to build a safer space. All right. So thank you, Whitney.
Thank you so much.